Welcome to Unapologetically Sensitive, where you can learn, relate, laugh, and maybe even live a bolder, brighter life. I'm your host, Patricia Young. This is a weekly podcast where we explore the strengths we have because of our sensitivity and some of the challenges it poses as well. The information in this podcast is not a substitute for help from a licensed mental health professional. Hey there. To the creatives, healers, sensitives, and deep thinkers, how the heck are you? We are at the beginning of August 2025. The year is going fast. I'm not going to say anything else about this year. Today, I want to talk to you about internalized ableism. And if you are neurodivergent, if you have ADHD, if you are ADHD, are autistic, are OCD, and all the other ways that we show up neurodivergently, my guess is that you have some internalized ableism. I'm continuing to unfold more and more of my internalized ableism. I wanted to talk about it today. First, I'm going to give you a definition of internalized ableism. It's when disabled or neurodivergent people unconsciously adopt negative beliefs, shame, or judgment about themselves due to societal stigma, stereotypes, or expectations about what is normal. It's the internal voice that says, I should be able to do this like everybody else. And I'm going to talk about all the ways that it shows up for us. And hopefully this will be very clear. I've spent years trying to unlearn the ways that I've internalized that something was wrong with me. And even before I knew that I was autistic, before I identified as being a highly sensitive person, and I'm sure you can relate to this is where a lot of our trauma comes from because we're constantly being told to do things that will make us more neurotypical. And we are neurodivergent, and we don't often know that, and that creates trauma. So some of the things that we absorb early on are messages that you may have heard growing up that you're too lazy, you're too much, you get distracted, you're too rigid. Boy, that one about rigid really resonates for me. And when we don't know that we're neurodivergent, I hate to say it, but even young kids in school who have IEPs and have IEP, an individualized education plan, and have teachers and professionals around them, sometimes we're all human. It's just hard, and people get labels and use words that are not very kind. How school, family, peers, media reinforces ableist ideas. And masking is a coping skill. It's a survival strategy. And masking is everything that we do to appear neurotypical. I'm even unloading or unpacking some of this now that I'm practicing stimming and moving, and I have vocal stims, and I still suppress a lot of them. I have a colleague who I really admire, and I'm just seeing a whole other layer of my internalized ableism. When I podcast, I use lots of vocal inflection in my speech because I feel like it makes it more interesting. That's masking. Making eye contact, that's masking. And when I visit with this person that I'm talking about, they always have something in their hands and need to be moving. They wear jewelry. It's CHEWELRY, like jewelry, but it's stuff you chew on. And they have a necklace on that has a different piece of jewelry. So if they need to stim with their mouth, they put it in their mouth. They are so comfortable with who they are and what their needs are. And we were in a group the other day with some other autistic therapists, and they shared the disclosure that they have when clients come to work with them because they're going to stim, they're going to fidget, they're going to move. I do those things too, but I'm stealth about it. And I realize that's part of my still masking and wanting to make clients feel comfortable as opposed to, this is who I am and this is how I regulate so that I can be very present for you. And I'm just seeing more and more layers of how much I have judgments about the way that I think we're supposed to show up. And the fear of if I show up authentically, and don't use inflection in my voice like in this podcast. Is it going to be too boring for you? Being more mindful about my speaking patterns to make it easier to listen to, trying to be more linear instead of rambling here and there. That's all internalized ableism. Some of the ways that internalized ableism shows up is feeling like a failure for resting. How many of you, including me, need to nap or rest during the day and feeling like there's something wrong with me? I'm always looking at people around me and seeing how much they're able to do, how social they are, how much activity they get, and comparing myself because I feel like I have to figure out what the standard is as opposed to knowing that I can do what I can do. Feeling guilty for needing accommodations. I keep earplugs on me all the time and sometimes needing the music turned down. How often do you feel like it's not okay to ask for something that you need? And I don't always, this is the internalized ableism. I don't want to be the wet rag. I don't want to be the disappointment. I don't want to be the one that has to leave early or people have to leave early for. There's another couple that we go out to dinner with, and there was a restaurant we were going to go to that you need reservations for. We made reservations, and then one of the other people in the couple weren't able to make it. And then they rebooked the reservation. We had plans, and then I don't know why it didn't occur to me, but this restaurant has indoor seating and doesn't have outdoor seating. With COVID, I'm very, very, very unlikely to eat inside a restaurant. I have made some exceptions. If I have control over it, I will not do that for a number of reasons, primarily my health. I'm not going to go into justify. When they asked about making this reservation, I said, unless they have outdoor seating, I'm not comfortable going. And then one of the people asked my husband if my husband wanted to go to the restaurant, the three of them, and I wasn't going to go. And I got pretty upset about that. Of course, my husband supported me and said no and told me that one of the people had asked him. I'll tell you, for a couple of weeks, I felt really angry about that if the two of them chose to go somewhere together, but not something that we would do as two couples, and you're going to go and exclude me because I have things that are important to me, I need an accommodation. I really didn't think I was going to get over that, and I did get over it after a while, but that one was a tough one. Also, this idea of pressure to push through or to keep up with neurotypicals, and how often do we push through? And this is a constant struggle for me about knowing, do I just push a little bit more? Do I not push a little bit more? My son was here over the 4th of July weekend, not the one who's in the Navy and got married, the other one. He really wanted to go to the wild animal park, which if you're in San Diego, it's more inland. And initially it was supposed to be 80 degrees. And I thought, I can handle that. And I thought, okay. And they got tickets. And then the day of, it was supposed to be 85 degrees. And I thought about what are the accommodations that I need. I thought that they were only open for a limited amount of time because I considered taking my own car. So if I got too overheated, I think I've mentioned this before, I'm also on medication that makes me more sensitive to the heat. I think I told you this too, that Soup Jean gave me a handkerchief a while ago, which I thought was absolutely ridiculous. And then for the wedding, she gave me a white handkerchief to put in a purse that she gave me. So now I have 2 handkerchiefs, which I use very often and am so grateful. And we were walking around the park and it was getting hot. It turns out it was 91 that day, which is very hot, especially for me. So I asked for a cup of ice. And initially I found a little Ziploc baggie in my purse and I used it on my neck and on my head. And then the second time I asked for more ice, I put it in the handkerchief so that it would melt down my shirt, and I put it under my hat. Once I got regulated temperature-wise, it was better, but we did a lot of walking. And had you told me before I went that it was going to be 91 degrees, I wouldn't have gone. I'm glad that I went. And if we go again, I'm not going to do it in the summer. But I definitely had that thing of I didn't want it to be a drag for everybody. I didn't want people to have to leave because of me. And then if I get too hot, then I don't manage very well. Those are all internalized ableism, as opposed to knowing this is what I need and this is what I can do and this is what I need to do if I'm not doing well. How many of you struggle with those things, asking for accommodations? And many of us get negative comments from family, friends, partners about being a drag or not being able to keep up, or nobody wants to invite you because you always need something special. That's ableism. Another way that this shows up is shame around executive dysfunction and inconsistent abilities, that sometimes we're able to show up on time or follow through or do things, and other times we're not. I'm really noticing with being on medication for my OCD. Before, my autism and OCD were what my therapist calls driving the car. That's really what was very forward. And this is very stereotypical. This isn't exact, but this is the best way I can language it, that being on time is kind of a big deal for me anyways, but following the rules and having things done a certain way, and that sense of order was very, very important. And the OCD is very protective in nature. So there's a sense of if things are in order, then I'll be safe. I wouldn't articulate it that way because it doesn't feel that way, but I know that that's true. And it's funny, at night, my husband puts out a hot water kettle, a cup, and a tea bag for his tea in the morning. And he likes to set all three of those up in a certain way. And I think he's got some OCD. So I like to go in there and turn the handle 45 degrees, maybe move the tea bag on the other side, turn the other cup around. And the safety is this. I'm not saying that this happens for him, but when I've done it and he's there, he corrects it. And so that sense of safety is, I'm more comfortable when it's set up the way that I do it, and I'm very uncomfortable if it's moved another way. So safety doesn't always mean something terrible is going to happen, but that need for order and predictability and having things a certain way. And since I've been on the OCD meds, I feel like my ADHD is coming out more, which is very common. It's not uncommon for people that are diagnosed with ADHD and they go on medication, and then all of a sudden their autism symptoms start coming out more because the ADHD is more managed. And then in my case, I'm seeing more of the ADHD, that I'm having a much harder time initiating tasks. My focus is just not so great. I'm much more relaxed and I seem to make more mistakes. And I think so much of my esteem is built on being competent and doing things well. And when I lose track of things, just before I started recording, I need to go pick something up today, and I'd absolutely forgotten. I did put a reminder in my phone, but had that reminder not popped up, would have totally forgotten. It's a little bit of an aside. A couple weeks ago, a month ago, I don't know, when my husband and I went to the commissary, I bought some sweets. And one of the things that I bought was a York peppermint patty. And we have acrylic bins in the pantry where we keep stuff. And one of them is for my treats. I hid everything. I put it in there because my son, who's in the Navy, is training for a half triathlon. And he will come home, pick up his bike, go for a 25 mile ride, and then come home and eat everything that we have in the house, including all of our sweets. And I had just bought a container of chocolate covered almonds the previous time that he'd been here, and he ate all of them in one sitting. So I hide my stuff. That's kind of what the bottom line is I hide my stuff. Weeks later, I went to go get the York peppermint patty and it wasn't there. And I told my husband, and my husband's like, I'll go out and get it for you. And this has probably been 4 or 5 days now. I'm still looking for that darn York peppermint patty. And we went to the commissary a couple days ago and I bought a replacement. And I know that my son, who's in the Navy, does not like mint, so it was unlikely that he ate it. But of course, I had to ask everybody if they ate it. And then I thought, well, maybe I put it somewhere else. So I looked in all the other places that I hide food, because I hide food. And I haven't been able to find it. This does not have to do with internalized ableism. It is part of my persistence. We could call it stubbornness. We could call it perseverating. I want to know where that peppermint patty is. Out of principle, I do not do well when I lose things or misplace things. It does not happen very often. But the fact that I don't know what happened to it, and I really thought, did I eat it? I haven't checked my car because I thought maybe I put it in my purse and it fell out of my purse, but I checked my purse twice the other day and it's bugging me. I want to know where that peppermint patty is. Does this happen to you if you lose things? Are you just like, oh, well, or are you like me that you're going to keep thinking about it until you find it? The other thing with executive dysfunction is it's consistently inconsistent. So what you're able to do one day may not be what you're able to do the next day or the next week. And I often see, and I find with clients, that they'll go through these periods that I call expansive, when maybe they're more outgoing, they're more productive, they're more social, they get a lot of stuff done. And when I would have those periods, I would think I've arrived, because I feel very neurotypical when that happens. And then I move back into a more contractive state where I'm just not able to produce as much. And on those days where I really do a lot, it's not uncommon for me the next day or 2 days or 3 days to have less energy because of how much extra energy I expended, that it's just not where my baseline is. But when we beat up on ourselves on how come I can't show up on time? How come I can't get meals organized? How come I can't keep the house clean? How come I always forget things? How come I can't get an exercise program going? Why can't I finish this degree? All of those things are internalized ableism, thinking that if we could just get it together, then we would be able to function in the way that we perceive that everybody else functions. We don't use the term high functioning or low functioning when we talk about autism. We talk about high support needs and low support needs. I do hear high functioning used in the autistic community, but being told that you're high functioning is not a compliment. And the harm of functioning labels does not account for people that may have higher support needs, still are fully competent and internally know what's going on, and maybe non-speaking. I'm trying to think if that's the correct term. The other thing, this is an aside, I was in this group the other night and it came up twice, the term time blindness. And the blind community has said that they do not like that term being used. I think they said it in a much more polite way. So if you want to talk about time blindness, we're talking about time agnosia. And there may be another way to say that, but that's how I'm going to say it. And that is not having a sense. We were just talking about this in this group last night, that in neurotypical terms, time is very linear. And if you're neurodivergent, time is not linear at all. And I've talked about this often. How this shows up for me is I'll know that something is due on the 3rd, and this thing has to be done and turned in and done on the 3rd. And I'm very aware of that. But what I fail to recognize is that today is the 3rd, that I can hold due dates in my head, but where that relates to where I am currently in time, I just really struggle with that. And oftentimes people that I'm feeling concerned that I'm going to use ableist language. And if I do, please feel free to shoot me an email, unapologeticallysensitive@gmail.com, because I don't struggle with this as much. And I don't think that I am as sensitive in my language, but people that have a hard time showing up on time, that they start a project and then all of a sudden they lose track of time, which happens to me. I just use timers on my phone for just about everything, because if I've got a couple minutes before a client and I start looking at something, it's very common for me to go down a rabbit hole. For me, setting a timer is very helpful, and that doesn't work for everybody. And oftentimes people that are neurotypical, or for me, because timer works, I could tell everybody else to set a timer, but that may not be effective for everybody. We need to be very sensitive about what works for one person may not work for another, and that expectation of, if you just did the thing or set a timer, this wouldn't be a struggle. Another way that this shows up is this idea of, I'm not disabled enough. I'm not autistic enough. After I was diagnosed, I still questioned whether I was autistic. I think that we often go through, am I making this up? Am I faking it? Am I being dramatic? Is it that I don't want to do it? We don't trust that our bodies are tired and they need to rest. I struggle every time I get migraines, and I've seen a neurologist, and I explained what went on, and the neurologist gave me medication. Every time I get a headache, what you're supposed to do is to take a migraine medication so it doesn't get worse. If you have migraines and you let them go too far, it can create problems over time. But I have so much resistance to medication. I almost always tell myself, I just need to hydrate. I'm probably dehydrated. or it's just a tension headache. My neck is really tight, and so I probably don't need the migraine med. What I can tell you is every time I take the migraine medication, the headache goes away. That should tell you something. And I still struggle. And quite often my husband will say, why don't you just take some medication? And I always have that thing of, maybe I don't need it. I don't want to take it too much. I think about when the last time I took it was. And when I saw the neurologist, we talked about how much is too much. And I am not anywhere close to taking it too much. And I still struggle. I think this is very common if you've got POTS, if you've got MCAS. POTS is postural orthostatic tachycardia, where you have dysautonomia and standing up and sitting down and blood pooling and your heart racing and your heart going into different patterns, wondering if you can push through. I mean, all of these things there are so many comorbidities that come with being autistic. And often it takes 5 to 10 years to get some of these things diagnosed because we've got physicians that don't understand autism, what goes with autism, and we're shuffled around from one specialist to another. And we're gaslit, and then we gaslight ourselves. And I've got a couple of friends that have a lot of chronic problems, and often we talk and we just discount it. Or I often will have a Zoom call with a colleague of mine who's also autistic, and I'll say, like, I'm tired, but I think I can push through. And I was at a Zoom meeting the other day for autistic therapists, and the facilitator said, if you need to wiggle, if you need to turn off your camera. And I was really in a squirrely place. And I had the Zoom link for the meeting. I logged in about 10 minutes early, and the Zoom link wasn't a good link. And I went through all of the emails, all of the messages, couldn't find it, messaged the person that was facilitating it, didn't hear back from them, and just thought, I'm tired, I'm kind of relieved, and went to do something else. And about 10 minutes after 5, my friend texted me and gave me the link, and I logged in, but I realized my brain had already decided we weren't going to do the meeting, and it was a difficult adjustment. And I get squirrely anyways. I really struggle with, can I connect with people? Can I relax? Can I feel safe with people if I'm not in a leading, teaching mode? And I have that need for connection, and I also feel really uncomfortable with it. But that kind of goes back to this thing of, do we push through? Do we not push through? I did stay for the meeting, and I'm glad that I did. But that sense of, are we making it up? Can we trust ourselves as part of it? And I believe that our capitalistic world really is about valuing productivity and what we do and pushing through. So when we have these days where we're able to do more, there's a sense of confidence and satisfaction, and our culture rewards that. Our culture does not value rest. If you look at the Europeans, they take, 5-6 weeks of vacation every year. And if you look in Spain, where things close down in the afternoons for people to take a siesta, not here in the US, you work 80 hours a week and you're doing a great job because you're working hard and pulling yourself up by the bootstraps, which is a whole other thing I'm not going to get into. But we have this sense of value and worth societally that comes from pushing through. Internalized ableism also shows up in relationships, independence, and that feeling of too much, the fear of being a burden in friendships or romantic relationships. Boy, that one really resonates with me. And I would say that I don't do scripting, which is planning out a conversation before you have the conversation with an actual person. The word scripting doesn't resonate for me, but I was imagining a conversation with a friend that I'm going to be meeting with. And this is about my internalized ableism, so maybe I'll just share what it is. We are working on a project together. I'm trying to figure out how much information to give. I'm going to be vague. We're working on a project together, and it's a project that I've done before and they haven't. And having systems is really important to me. It just helps with my executive dysfunction if I know where things are and what the pattern is and how I manage lots of moving pieces. And they also are very good at organization. So they've set up some folders and drives. We're using a Google Drive, and we're sharing things between our drives. And they've set up some things that make sense to them, but it doesn't make sense to me. And now I've got folders that are duplicates on my Google Drive. I really struggle with the fear of not being competent with technology. I'm relatively competent with technology, not as competent as they are by any means. And I think that brings up some stuff for me. And I've been really frustrated the last couple of days because I can't figure out where things are, because we've got duplicate files, duplicate folders, and I really want to replicate what I've been doing with this new project, because I've done this project before, and how I do it, not only does it make sense to me, but some of the things that I want to replicate are logical. It just, I feel like I want to say it's the right way to do it. It feels very efficient. It makes sense. And when you end up getting a lot of data, if you put data in and you continue to roll it on the same sheet, then you have to keep scrolling down. And by the time you have a lot, it's a pain in the neck. So numbering things, putting them in a larger file, but numbering each one, where you have running sheets, doing the newest on top so that you don't have to keep scrolling down to the bottom, things like that. And while I was doing this scripting, I was trying to decide, do I self-disclose that part of what comes up for me is frustration and a sense of incompetence, that I can't figure out how to get the folders and files moved to where I need, and I need help to do that. And I asked my son, and I also asked my daughter-in-law, and they weren't able to help me over the weekend for whatever reason. So it brings up a vulnerability, and it also bumps up against that fear of, am I being rigid? Am I being controlling? And a sensibility of, this is something that I've done, I'm very experienced in, and I know what an effective workflow is. And because there are some parts of this that are going to be related to people that I work with, it makes more sense. But I've been so dysregulated and frustrated about this. So I was trying to decide, do I just give the information about what I need, or do I share vulnerably about the whole thing? And that's internalized ableism. And my fear of, I'm being too rigid and controlling it, that I want it to be a certain way. If you feel like you need to tone down your needs or your intensity, that's another thing I think that we struggle with. Of, somebody says, how are you? And do you say fine, or do people really want to know? And if you're really excited about something, do you tell them the whole thing, or do you tone it down? I think we have so much about being called too intense and too much and too needy and too sensitive and too fragile and all of that stuff. There's also ableism around interdependence and why needing support is valid and not shameful. But we've gotten messages about, why can't you do this yourself? And like, for the technical things, I keep going to the Google Drives and trying to figure out how to clean things up, and I can't, and I get frustrated. And I did ask the person that I'm working with, if the next time we meet, if they could help me, and they're like, fine. And I've just been grumbly about this because I'm frustrated that I can't do it on my own, that my system is being tampered with. Where do you see this showing up for you? The last part is unlearning and reclaiming, and what unlearning internalized ableism has looked like. So rest is resistance. And there's a book. I think it's called Rest is Resistance. I'll see if I can find it and put it in the show notes. Resting is okay. Taking downtime is okay. Slowing things down is okay. That we need that, especially for our nervous systems. Asking for support. Even when we don't know what we need, sometimes just saying, hey, can I do a brain dump? Hey, can I just talk about what's going on? And I don't really need any input, or if you have some input, I'd love some input. Do I have any blind spots? Letting people know what you need. And if you're a verbal processor, being able to just share that information with someone. Some of you like to pull back, figure it all out yourselves, and then step back in. So you need to honor what your processing is. Self-accommodation. What does that look like? And for me, that's knowing how much I can do in a day, how many social things, how many clients, how much exercise, how much rest I need, making sure that I've got downtime, that if I have a full day, that I've got time to rest, whatever those accommodations are. Often that revolves around nutrition, making sure that I've got the nutrition that works for my body so that I function optimally. Finding pride in your neurodivergence. In some areas, I have a lot of pride, and in other areas, I'm still really struggling with that being too much and feeling apologetic for the needs that I have. And I really want to work on that a little bit more, but feeling proud about our strengths. We tend to be great problem solvers. We have a great sense of justice. We can be very persistent. We can be very knowledgeable about things. We can be incredibly committed and creative and come up with solutions that are outside of the box. What are the strengths and gifts that you have? And finally, choosing softness and self-compassion over judgment. This can be a tough one. This can be a tough one. We're all learning. We're doing the best that we can. It's a process. And when we are tired and stressed and there's a lot going on and we're not being able to take care of ourselves, the judgment's going to be higher. When we are able to meet our needs more wholly, it's easier to have more self-compassion. So notice that if you're in a place where you're really beaten up on yourselves, do an inventory and how are you sleeping? How's your nutrition? How's your relationships? How's moving your body? Are you getting those basic needs met? Are you not feeling well? Those are all going to make the self-judgment increase. Where have you internalized that your needs or brain are wrong? And what I would love to leave you with is this thought that you are not broken. You were shaped by systems that weren't built for you. You deserve rest, joy, and support exactly as you are. I'm going to do my little spiel here, and I think instead of ending the way that I normally do, I'm going to repeat that at the end. If you're interested in working with me, you can reach out to me at unapologeticallysensitive.com. I love working with therapists. If you think that you're a neurodivergent, you've just been diagnosed, you need help with communication, parenting, relationships, boundaries, figuring out who you are now as a newly diagnosed ADHDer, ADHDer, those are things I can help you with and love working with folks. I offer a free 20-minute consult. I think I said you can reach out to me at unapologeticallysensitive.com. Remember, sensitivity is nothing to apologize for. It's how your brain is wired. You are not broken. You were shaped by the systems that weren't built for you. You deserve rest, joy, and support exactly as you are. Have a blessed day.